outside the research. In my capacity as a teacher, I'm like, sure, man. In the classroom, it's just me and my learners. Who's going to see that I'm not speaking English only? So this is what we do, guys. When we are discussing a concept, we can use any language, right? So when we're discussing, you can use any language, but then when you're writing in English. Because my fear was, if I don't teach you this English, when the exam comes, so what we did is we would discuss in any language. So when they give me, remember I was that teacher, they give me an answer into that, I'm like, English only in my class, right? And then now I'm that teacher, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense to you in that way. Okay, let's work with that. Right? So now we can use any language. And then that's when I saw a change in my grade 2 learners. They started being interested when it comes to writing. Their confidence, it developed. And for me to even start this writing change, it's because they were writing me like so many cards, guys. Sweets, you know, grade 2 is so sweet. They're giving me sweets, they're giving me cards, they're interested in writing now. So I'm like, okay, this is a chance for me, right? So we can use this for learning. So we have this writing journey. Can I just tell you how I made this book? What I did, I took a colored paper, I took 2 white papers, folded them, and stapled them on the side. They have a book, they're writing their own story. So I just chose one story that I'd like to read to you guys. It's written by a boy, Kawakelo. They're there, you see they're so focused, right? And they're writing, imagine, but they're so focused and they're so quiet. So, well, it's an achievement, guys. It's an achievement for us. So this one, he drew a picture of a person who's a superhero, and then this is what he wrote. Once upon a time, there was a boy called Des, and Des was in grade 11. So Des had 59 hours at school. He liked superheroes. And Des has his own room. His father is a mechanic, and that mechanic is spelled correctly, guys, like grade 2. They got it. And then he has 8 TV and 8 computers. His family is rich. Was I not happy? I was. I'm like, wow, this is beautiful. This is actually great, right? And then I'm like, okay, since translanguaging is already happening in my class, I want to see if the results that I'm seeing in my class, is it because of the translanguaging or is it because it's just maturity? You know that when you're working with foundation phase, there's a point where they get to mature and time also makes a difference, right? Which gave that to my study. Now let's talk about my master's study, right? So I think a social problem that we know is that the learners are not reading at the expected level, right? And then what happens is the mother tongue policy in South Africa, we say that from grade 1 to grade 3, we teach you in your mother tongue, and then from grade 4 upwards, we are teaching you in FAR, which in most cases is English, right? So what happens is when we're in grade 1, remember we are teaching them to read, but when they get to grade 4, they need to read to learn. Right? So when they get there, they struggle a lot. Research has shown that they struggle a lot. So I'm like, okay, there is me as a researcher, there is this social problem. What am I going to do? So there is Ubuntu Translanguaging, which was done by my supervisor for PhD, but he did it in a grade 4 classroom. And when you look for research in South Africa, there is not much. So I'm like, okay, as a researcher, I can fill in that gap. So I'm going to do a research in formal school, and I'm going to do it in the foundation phase classroom. So that's what my study is about. And then, so what I want to see, right, I want to see the impact of Ubuntu Translanguaging. Does it improve reading proficiency or it doesn't? And what I'm also going to do is to look at the reading development before the intervention and after the intervention, which is the Ubuntu Translanguaging intervention. And then I also want to compare the reading levels between the two groups, which I'm going to talk more about in the two methodology. So the things that I looked at briefly what causes these literacy failures. So it includes classrooms that are overcrowded. It also includes the reading strategies that are implemented without effect, right? And then I also looked at Ubuntu Translanguaging. So it's described as a practice way, I'm summarizing it, it's a practice way 2 languages are used simultaneously in a classroom to teach reading comprehension. Remember, my focus is reading proficiency. So when you see Zinhle Translanguaging, reading proficiency. And then, so I also looked at the formation of the former Model C schools. Like, we know that before the Model C schools, it was white only. which is something that has changed now. It could be a model C school, but it's not only one. Right? And I also looked at the monolingual bias. Do you know what a monolingual bias is? So it's something that Ms. Nxumalo was doing when she was saying, this is my classroom, we only speak English in this class. Or this is my classroom, we only speak Zulu. That is a monolingual bias. And also how other researchers have seen, when Sing is also was doing research in foundation phase. So what she found out is that the teachers were saying the learners are actually, because they are multi-language. See what happened when we were speaking, when Mem was giving us a lesson and we were answering in Zulu and Matbat. So other teachers see that as an obstacle. It means you don't understand what I'm teaching because you're not speaking the language that I'm speaking. And then also, something that McKinney found, it was that the teachers said their learners have no language, which simply meant that they're not speaking English. It's a very interesting article if you're interested. It's McKinney 2015. So, not that, and it's not that the learners don't have the language, they're not speaking English, that's all. And then I also looked at the advantages of translanguaging, which is that it improves literacy. It also allows deeper content access, right? And then we also saw that besides it developing deepening content knowledge, right, it develops the weaker language through the other. And then another thing is that it gives the learners more bilingual and multilingual, the cognitive advantages and the social advantages. Cognitive, they get to think outside the box. They think they're able to think. And socially, you can relate with so many people, which puts you at an advantage. And then also, I looked at the shift from monolingual practices to the bilingual approaches. And then, so I'm going to be doing my research. I use a pseudonym there at Faith Primary School. And then the school there consists mostly of black learners, and then a few mixed race. And then I'm going to take 30 grade 3 learners, and 30 for experimental group, and 30 for a control group. So what I did is, remember, I'm a grade 2 teacher, and translanguaging is already happening in my class. So I'm going to go to another grade where the transition happens. So I'm going to go to the grade 3 classroom and see if it happens and plant it there. And then I'm going to observe two teachers, which is convenient for me because it's the people that I work with. And then the linguistic profile, most learners they are Zulu home language speakers, and others the other Nguni languages, Sotho, Tswana, and Pedi. And then there are a few who speak French at home. So, we can skip this one. The methodology, so how do I intend to see the impact of Ubuntu translanguaging from the learners? What I'm going to do, I'm going to use a mixed method study, so I'm going to do qualitative and quantitative. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to observe my two grade 3 teachers. So when I'm observing there, I want to see how do they teach reading. Do they teach English only when it's English reading lesson? And do they teach with this is when it's Zulu lesson, or do they mix it? So I want to see, does translanguaging happen in that classroom? And then from there, what I'm going to do, from the same class, I'm going to randomly select 30 and assign them to a control, assign them to the experimental group. And then the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to give them the pre-test, right? I'm going to give the experimental group the pre-test, give the control group the pre-test. The test is going to be testing the reading skills. And then what I'm going to do after I do my experimental group, I'm going to give them an intervention, which is Ubuntu translanguaging. I think I've explained it so far. We get it now. We're using more than one language to conversate. And then from there, after I'm going to do the interventions for 2 weeks. And then after I skip 2 weeks and then give them the process again, give both learners the process. So what I want to see is that how are the learners' scores before the intervention, and do they improve after the Ubuntu translanguaging intervention? And then the skills that I'm going to be testing vocabulary, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to give them a picture and they have to label the picture, and then I'm going to be testing the recalling skills, which means they're going to read a story and answer the questions based on the story. And I'm also going to test their retelling ability. So I'm going to do a read-aloud lesson, which is a very interesting story. It's this African lady, man. The name of the story is Sule. Does anyone know it? Sule. all of us last year.
The what?
The movie that we want to watch last year. Yes, thank you, Peter. This is the way I'm going to read. And then, so how am I going to analyze my data? I'm just going to use descriptive stats to analyze the basic features. And then I'm going to use the two sample tests to compare if the mean difference is really due to the intervention or did it just happen by chance. And then for the qualitative, so I'm going to be using things to see how the learners retell the story and remember the story, comparing the original story to the story that the learners told me. So what I hope to achieve with this study of mine is that I inform the foundation phase language and literacy policy, also inform the teacher training, and then perhaps give premises for any new research that might arise from this study. And then I have the references if you're interested to go and read. And also, thank you so much. Yes. You can give me suggestions, questions, comments, they are all welcome. And if you are interested in the results, I can email them to you. There's my email address there.
Thank you so much for the presentation.
Yes. Thank you very much for the post study. It's quite adventurous because we know that Model C schools tend to be no-go areas in terms of research, mainly because of the policies that they tend to adopt. So I'm really looking forward to your findings and your experiences with conducting such a study in the former Model C schools. I can already anticipate some issues regarding to that, but here is what I just want to ask you, it's both a question and a comment. One, you probably want to add affective advantages to your study because you talked about cognitive and social advantages. There's literature on that that has been conducted, some of it outside South Africa, that shows things like confidence and so on. So those are some of the things that you may want to add. But then with regards to the study design, where are you going to conduct your research? Okay, let me put it this way. Are the schools where you're going to conduct the research the same schools or the same school, let me say the same school where you're teaching?
Yes.
Okay. Are you looking at conducting it in your own class? What's going on? I'm just curious.
Oh, okay. I thought I explained that. Oh, yes. I'm going to be doing my research where I teach.
In your own classroom?
Remember I said, yes. So, remember...
Okay, please, let's allow her. And now I'm getting confused with everyone talking.
Okay, I'm going to be doing the research where I teach.
Okay.
Yes. And then it's not going to be in my own classroom. Remember, in my classroom, it's already happening. I'm already doing Translanguaging.
Okay.
Remember.
Okay.
So and I was doing grade 2. Okay. So now I'm going to do a different grade and 2 different classrooms.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it still the foundation phase?
It's still the foundation phase. Because I was doing it in grade 2. I'm doing it in grade 2, and I'm going to be researching in grade 3 now.
Okay, no, that's what I need to find out. But I'm going to allow other people because I also wanted to ask something about your intervention in terms of the pre-test and post-test. But I'll talk to you about that so that you can allow other people.
Yes, there's a hand there. I have the same type of question regarding the intervention, especially how you frame your pre-test and your post-test. But specifically what I'm interested in is what do you anticipate would be the structure of you doing the intervention? Because oftentimes when you do research in a classroom, are you going to be the one that facilitates the research? Because you're going to give them the space to kind of reenact what you were doing, or just the space between your pre-test and your post-test, for instance, right?
Yeah.
So what would be happening in that time, and who's going to be facilitating what would be happening? If you're going to be the researcher who's doing the facilitation of the actual intervention, are you going to be training the actual teacher of that grade 3 class, your experimental group, for instance, to enact in your absence, or what is the structure? That's what I'm trying to figure out, as far as then how would you then contain, because you're doing a mixed method, right?
Yeah.
So then how would you then explain any other extraneous variables that you might come across in your experiment as far as the pre and the post are? I want to know what's happening with your intervention. So how are you containing your intervention in your experimental group? Who is facilitating the intervention? What is the role of the actual teacher for the experimental group? And how are you going to account for that?
Okay. Thank you for that. So remember, I'm the researcher, so I'm the facilitator. And I'm not going to be doing it full time. Remember, because I'm also working. So what I'm going to do is I've explained the pre-test and the testing the reading skills, right? So I give the experimental group and the control group. And then during my intervention, remember, according to Translanguaging, we use it to teach reading comprehension.
Okay,
So
for practice. Is
yes.
that what you're doing?
So what we're going to do is we are reading a story in English, and then we discuss it. And when we're discussing it, we're discussing it using like the Nguni language. It can be Zulu, Tswana, Xhosa, right? But the output, remember guys, in Translanguaging, the input, the languages, when we are discussing, that's when they interfere with each other. But the output is given in one language. So what we are doing, we are discussing using these different languages. We are getting to understand what we are talking about, right? And then output, we want to see if they understand what they're going to do. I'm going to have chats with, say maybe we are reading the Sule story, right? After reading the story, we are discussing it. What did you like about the story? What do you think about the story? So what I want them to tell me what they think about the story. Remember, as teachers, we normally have those tendencies of wanting to tell them all the time. But now I want to know what are they thinking. And I've seen that writing and drawing, that's where they express themselves. So I'm going to have chats where we can have a group thing where they draw and show me what they think about this story. Right? And then I'm going to put they up in the wall. Remember, it's where I work. So every day when I go there in those 2 weeks, if they see something different, they're adding it. It can be a picture, it can be some writing. So that's my intervention. And I'm aware also of the maturity period. Remember, before you test, you need to give them some time. So I'm going to test them, then 2 weeks, and then I give a space of 2 weeks again. I do my intervention for 2 weeks, I give a space of 2 weeks again, and then I give the post test.
So what I'm asking is there going to be some form of continuation of what you have done by the actual teacher that teaches the experimental group?
Remember, this is an English school. So they have, as she was saying, they've got their own policies. So everyone knows that the language of learning and teaching is going to be English.
No, I think you're misunderstanding my question. My question is, so
do you have the answer?
No, you can continue.
Okay.
Am I trying to continue?
Yes, sir.
Yes. What I'm asking is this the intervention for the experimental group part and parcel of what will be going on when you do it in that specific classroom? Or is it an intervention that you're doing that is separate from what is going on? And then if you use your reflexivity training or whatnot, how does that then impact on whether there's an uptake of the translanguage of the Ubuntu translanguage in itself, or the sustainable impact of your intervention? That's what I'm asking. Are you doing an intervention that is part and parcel of what's going on in that classroom? Then it has space to mature so that you have a reasonable rationale for saying that 2 weeks is enough for maturation of that intervention? Or is it something that's completely separate from what's happening in that classroom, which then does impact whether there is a maturation and there is, for instance, a need for maturation of whatever the 2 weeks that you've given, or if you need more? And how does that impact on the influence of your study, whether there's an uptake or not?
Okay, I feel like I've answered you already, but let me try again. I'm not sure if I get you. But remember, I come in there as a researcher. And this is an English school, so they are not supposed, I hope there's no one oh, is it? Guys, she wants to drop. Oh man, but it's fine. I know my life. So, what does the first go?
I'm not here this far. I'm a research psychologist, so I want to, that's why I want to understand what is the rationale behind how you're doing the intervention, and how does that then influence the uptake of the actual pedagogical practice that you claim works, right? I understand, before translanguaging, I pre-conceptualize this approach. So I want to know, have you thought about the dynamics of the actual teacher, what's happening in that classroom, because we have to preconceive all of that, because, and it's an experimental study, right? Yeah. So you have to take all of those factors into cognizance when you are designing the study, and what you preconceive would happen in that classroom. So for me, I suppose not to dissuade you or to disencourage you from doing your study, I'm trying to find exactly how you think this is going to be a sustainable impact, if any impact at all, if this intervention is conducted solely from a researcher's perspective and is removed from what is happening in the actual